Welcome back to the Caucus Room. I'm your chairman, Don Calloway, and today is an extraordinarily special day here in the caucus for a couple of reasons. Our guest today is our first sitting elected official. We're excited to discuss that. And secondly, this is the first time one of our guests is topically in the news at the moment. Let me tell you a little bit about our distinguished guest for today's episode. He is a native son, perhaps the native son of Baltimore. He's an electrical engineer, an HBCU graduate hailing from the prestigious Tuskegee University. He's a city councilor. He is a state legislator, having sat in the Maryland House of Delegates, city council president, the job he currently holds. He's a civic leader. He is a public servant at heart. He's an Omega man, 1911 love. He is my brother in the fellowship of the low beard guys, and most importantly, a committed dad and an outstanding father. Please welcome to the caucus the current sitting president of the Baltimore City Council, my good brother, NickMosby. The Honorable NickMosby.
Thanks for having me on, Mr. Chair.
Anytime, man. Listen, welcome to the caucus room, bro. I know you got some stuff you want to talk about, and you deserve the opportunity, man, to talk about whatever you want to. As you know, we start every episode with a toast from a Black-owned spirit of the caucus. We got some serious stuff to get into, so I'm going to try to go light. I'm not going to go as heavy as I typically do on the spirit of the caucus. But in honor of you and your hometown, man, wanted to toast with the Los Hermanos, the Anejo out of Baltimore.
Two brothers born and raised in Baltimore City. Quality product.
Yes, indeed.
I think they actually just came out with their Anejo line. So
shout out to Los Hermanos and shout out to Chat's Liquors down on Capitol Hill, who keeps us laced with all the Black-owned spirits. Brother, you have survived, man, and you have thrived. So cheers to you, man. I know it's been a rough run, but we're gonna get into it, man.
Say the least.
We're going to talk about your life and political career and how you got to this moment in your public service life. But the last 3 months, last week, your former wife, mother of your two beautiful daughters, was sentenced but avoided jail time. What a blessing. The week before that, you lost your re-election to your current job as city council president.
Correct.
And that was a grueling campaign that come with all the stuff that campaigns come with and then some more of that. While you have that job, you are guiding your city through not only a disaster, but the resulting economic potential crisis that came from the Scott Key Bridge collapse that the whole world saw in Baltimore. Prior to that, you're dealing with Maryland's criminal trial and being found guilty. And on top of all of this, you are still parenting and never dropped the parenting ball, man.
Right.
How you holding up, brother?
Well, I'm good. Yeah, I mean, folks talk about the job and folks keep saying, like, what's next? What's next? What's next? The reality is, my primary job is being a father.
Yeah.
And, through this storm, I mean, this all started probably 3 or 4 months into my first term as city council president. You had to show up and do your job every single day. That's in front of the media, in front of the cameras. But the most important job is showing up for your family and showing up for your daughters.
Yeah.
Because the reality is, no matter what challenges we go through in life, they end.
Yeah.
And it's about how we come out of those challenges and we learn from those challenges and we learn who we are and who's around us that's connected to our productivity, that's connected to our uplift that's so critically important. And I think that is the one, takeaway, a lesson that unfortunately my daughters had to go through and are living with, but are still thriving and doing well. So, I'm truly blessed. I tell them all the time, I couldn't imagine being a father with the type of challenges and the type of weight that's been on us over the past couple of years with different children. They've handled it exceptionally well. Still, being able to perform well in school and still being able to do the things that they had to do while seeing their mother and their father go through all that we've been through the past couple of years.
Divorce is difficult. And, a lot of us, I don't think, would have performed as admirably as you did in watching your ex-wife go through all these trials and then the public trials and her advocating for herself quite effectively, I thought, in leading up to sentencing. when you see her dealing with these proceedings, you're right there, right? Fully suited up, fully participatory, fully supporting her, and the world knows y'all aren't married anymore. But talk about your decision to be very publicly, um, physically with her and supporting her, and really holding your family together, supporting your family throughout these incredibly difficult months leading up to last week's sentencing.
The critical side as it relates to me being involved had absolutely nothing to do with the cameras, nothing to do with my political future or public perception of me, but all to do with my daughters.
Yeah,
The fact of the matter is, despite that mommy and daddy are separated and divorced and are moving on uh, in our separate ways, we're still a family.
yeah,
The things that affect my daughters affect me, and vice versa as it relates to their mother. So, I thought it was critically important that, I be there. The second piece of it all is, the fact that reason that Marilyn was my college sweetheart,
yeah,
and that we fell in love and that we got married. Part of it was because I know her presence, her being, her importance to our community,
yeah,
and and I'm a true believer,
yeah,
from seeing it from the start to where it is now, and understand and know that when we have folks that look like us that step out on issues that are for us, that are for our communities, they come under attack.
yeah,
Just being a student of Black history, so at no point was I going to ever turn my back on knowing what she was going through, but more importantly, why she was going through it.
yeah.
I thought that meant a lot to my daughters, and just me, uh, being connected to those issues and loving my community the way that I love my community, and the importance of the things that she's done,
Yeah.
wasn't going to allow me to just turn a blind eye or turn my back on it.
So we'll get to that because I think it's important that we contextualize saying the quiet part out loud, which you the why this all happened and was visited on your family. Our good brother Andrew Gillum, who comes from the same generation of politicians as you and me and Marilyn, he talks about why some things happened to him and his family in that kind of trial. Um, and we're gonna get to the why, right? We're gonna get to contextualizing the summer of 2015 and how we got here. But it's important you brought up you and Marilyn are college sweethearts. Y'all go back to Tuskegee, rocking TU. I typically don't mess with Tuskegee cats. I will tell you. But you didn't just meet as adults and decide we're both ambitious politicians. Let's go after it. I mean, this is your life partner of 20 something years,
Yeah,
going way, way back.
yeah.
Talk about how you met her and the context that brought you to Tuskegee out of Baltimore.
Well, she's from Boston. I'm from Baltimore. First college generation
Mm,
students, from our families.
yeah,
From far away. She's
yeah,
further. She's in Boston. I'm in Baltimore. And we just started talking about the love for our communities, caring for our communities, the things that we thought were important, and how we expected to kind of move that along.
mhm,
And with that, we just kind of connected from that same wavelength.
right.
Coming from similar backgrounds, and caring about our communities in the same regard. And I think that's ultimately, what clearly led us down our pathways. I always knew I wanted to be an elected official in the city of Baltimore. She knew she wanted to kind of go after the criminal justice system and affect it in a way
Hmm.
that was going to be positive for our communities. And then ultimately, that's what we were able to do.
And you did it well for a long time.
Yeah.
You go to Baltimore, back home,
Yep.
after college and began a career as an electrical engineer. And then 2011 is your first time running for office, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Why did you get into the game? I know this was like a lifelong thing. You said as a
Yeah.
kid, I
Yeah. Yeah.
only wanted to serve the city of Baltimore. Why was city council the thing to do in 2011? And what was that journey like?
So, I tell people a story. If you know my background, it's all about my mother. I tell folks I grew up in a 3-bedroom house with 6 women and 1 bathroom, right?
Wow.
I thought I was gonna be able to grow up, have a family, have maybe a son that's gonna help me take out the trash. Well, God blessed me with 2 beautiful daughters and 3 beautiful nieces.
Yes, indeed.
So a lot of times I'm still all around females, but women. But I think the one thing that really struck me was my mother's commitment to like the political process.
Yeah.
Like my mother would catch 2 and 3 buses to work. I shared a bedroom to my sister with my sister and my mother till I was like 13, 14 years old.
Yeah.
Watch my mother wake up every single day, catch 2 and 3 buses to go to work to come home. But one of my fondest memories, my mother passed away in 2010. One of my fondest memories of her was always waiting for her on election day.
Mm.
And I would wait for her at the bus stop, and we would walk to our polling location. And
Yeah.
I was staying in line, whether it was an hour, 2 hours, right? And she would go vote. And back in the day in Baltimore, we had these machines where you go in, you shut the curtain, and you like press the levers.
Yeah. Oh,
and then
yeah.
you had to pull the curtain open, and that's what kind of
Yeah.
signaled your vote. And she would let me do that, right?
Yeah.
And it was like this thing that I wanted to do every, Baltimore, we had elections every 3 out of 4 years. And so I just saw her like connection to that. And then I'll tell you one thing that really struck me was I think I was in like third grade, and it was like a microcosm of 2008 when President Barack Obama won President of the United States. Well, at that time, that was the first elected African American mayor of the city of Baltimore, Kurt Schmoke.
Mhm.
And the excitement that was in my household with my mother, my aunts, and my grandmother, or with my neighbors, or when I went to school, that level of excitement and
Yeah.
hope about what a person that looked like us was going to be able to do for our community just really struck me. And then over the course of my life, I had a couple opportunities of meeting Kurt Schmoke a couple times. And, I said, hey, when I get out of school, I'm going for electrical engineering to create a means and end to provide opportunities for my mother. My first major purchase out of college was a car. It was for my mother,
Wow.
right? So
Not for yourself.
not from my mom. Yep,
Yeah.
I bought a Toyota Camry. But anyway, so that was a means for an end. But I always knew I had this itch to go into politics one day,
Yeah.
and the opportunity opened itself. Where there was an open seat in my area for city council, and I ran and came 4 out of 12.
Mm.
Yeah. Learned a lot though.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So once you actually got in, you had a meteoric rise, such that by 2015, you've participated meaningfully in advancing minority businesses in the city, funding HBCUs throughout the state, uh, you've banned the box.
Yeah, one of the most progressive ban the box in the entire country was passed in the city of Baltimore.
Yeah, and this is your bill. I mean, it was passed in the city, but this is your
Oh, it's my
signature
baby.
stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Talk about that stuff and the things you were able to achieve for the city of Baltimore on your watch, both as a city legislator and as the council president.
Well, I think I learned a lesson very early on with ban the box. So
Break down what is ban the box.
So ban the box basically says that hiring managers automatically will have some level of discriminatory type of, whether it's conscious or unconscious ways of looking at an application that someone's telling you that I've committed a crime in the past versus someone who has not.
Mhm.
Now we know whether it was 5 years ago, 10, 15 years ago, whatever criminal transgression it was, might not be related to who I am today or my ability to do this job today. What we also know is that when we look at statistically, African Americans, when we go down this pathway, in comparison to counterpart whites, are from a discriminatory perspective held to much higher standard.
Right.
I think there was a really good study at the time where it showed that basically an African American with a high school diploma and a white person who did not graduate from high school are basically on the same level playing field when it comes to checking that box,
Right.
criminal incarceration. So it basically says, hey, throughout the process, let Nick apply for the job, let Nick tell you why he's qualified for this job, what he brings to the table, and let him interview before you know the background of Nick.
Mhm.
It doesn't preclude someone from not hiring, but what it does do is provide them an opportunity to really, it provides Nick the opportunity to really fight and compete for that particular job.
Right. Without being immediately dismissed.
Without being because literally, folks would. I mean, and then many organizations had computer systems that if you check that box on an electronic application, that automatically went into trash can.
Right.
But it was crazy, Don, when I pushed this, and so I won in 2011 for the first time. I ran in 2007 when I lost, but I ran in 2011. I think it's like around 2012, and the Greater Baltimore Committee, all the major corporations in our city. They were like up in arms about it. I took out editorials in the newspaper. The Baltimore Sun at the time said they supported it, but then with all the pressure from the business community, came back in another editorial and said why it was such a bad policy.
Mhm.
It was just like really kind of provocative for whatever reason at the time. And I just simply couldn't understand or get it. And I'll never forget someone came to me and they said, our council's been moving along in a way that we're not seeing this level of energy or this level of discontent. but I'm letting you know what you're doing is the right thing.
Yeah.
And if they're not upset, if they're not screaming about it, and you're going along as you get along, that's not why you ran for the seat, and you're doing the right thing. And I kept pushing along, ultimately got it passed.
Mhm.
And like all the business folks thought, the sky didn't fall.
Right.
And
Right.
you know, we were providing folks with fair shot
Yeah.
to compete for jobs. I mean, if we're talking about recidivism, we're talking about growing our community, we talk about the importance of economic paradigm shifts in our community. It has to be about providing real opportunity for upward mobility for our folks, right?
Mhm.
Whether they're returning citizens or whether they're just sitting on grandma's couch. And
Yeah.
you know, that was the point of it, and I'm glad we were able to get it done.
You also had signature legislation around.
HBCUs?
We'll get to that.
All right, yeah.
Around creating a mentorship program for young adults, juveniles who have been caught up in the system in some way and are awaiting criminal adjudication.
Oh yeah. So
we research over here, man.
Oh yeah, I see that, man. Hey, man, many people don't know that. So when I was on the council, and this is pre Larry Hogan,
Mhm.
because Larry Hogan, they canceled the opportunity for programmers like myself to go in. But when I was on the council, what I would do is, we know that there's a high rate for adjudication of young folks who are awaiting trial as adults.
Yes.
Like 15, 16, 17-year-olds that are alleged to have committed like very serious crimes.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And the problem is they're extremely vulnerable because they're in a jail with adults.
Yep.
Right? They have to be out of sight, out of mind, but they're still in an annex.
Oh, absolutely.
Of an adult jail.
Yeah, Brian Stevenson talks a lot about that, about, you know, the fundamental like danger and violence involved in, you know, throwing these babies who have done bad things, but throwing these babies in here with these adult, often violent criminals.
Exactly. I mean, because everything was constructed for an adult jail, and you might keep them out of sight and out of hearing distance at times, but still, it's just not the type of place. So what I did was I connected with the State Department, and they allowed me to come into the jail like once a month.
Wow.
And I mean, it was to the point where they were letting me bring food in. I could bring them cheesesteaks. I brought them Javante Tank Davis one time.
Wow.
I bring different folks that they kind of knew.
Yeah. Just
to give them a chance to take a step back and hear from like very competent, very genuine voice that they could connect with and be with. And unfortunately, you know, some of the kids, if they returned home, they were murdered or they got caught up in other things. And we saw this pattern. So that's why we aggressively went after and did it. And it was rewarding for myself. From the standpoint of, you know, I can talk to young folks that are doing great. I can talk to this organization or that organization. But for young folk who is maybe 15, 16 years old, that's really hit the rock bottom, you know, they're facing murder or attempted murder or carjacking, whatever they're facing, to be able to look into them and try to pour some level of hope, some level of optimism, to be able to connect with them. How I think it did a lot for them, it definitely did a lot for me. Because, you know, what it sent me on a mission of is trying to go out and find those young folks that were in those pathways to ensure that they never winded up in those positions. So, I mean, that was a program that we ran for a really long time. You know, with the change of administration, elections have consequences. The governor of Maryland, Larry Hogan, came up with some new policies and procedures that did not allow for the program to continue.
But the program was effective.
Oh, I felt like it was very effective. I mean, and you talk to the folks at, you know, the Juvenile Services or at the Department of Corrections, they knew it was very effective as well. It was one of its kind.
Those folks now report to a new governor.
Yeah.
Wes. We know you watch, Wes. This is a legitimate program to re-implement. I know the guy who knows how to get it done for you, Wes. He's still the sitting council president, lest any of us forget.
Let me bring cheesesteaks back into the gym.
Hey, listen. Cheesesteaks for the Jits.
Oh, respect. They enjoyed it.
Full respect. You have the unique perspective of being the guy who has served at the city level and the state level. But you were still extraordinarily effective in both roles. You were effective on the city level, municipal level. You're effective on the state level. A couple things. I know you pushed HBCU funding, which is bigger than just one school. And when you have that opportunity as a state legislature, you're talking about Coppin, Bowie, Maryland Eastern Shore.
Morgan State.
Morgan State. Right. 4 HBCUs in Maryland. Not too many people know that.
And 3 founded in Baltimore City.
Really? Which ones?
Ooh.
Yeah. Coppin State.
So Bowie was founded in West Baltimore.
I Did not know that.
No one knows that.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
okay,
You
fantastic.
you ask a student at Bowie, they wouldn't know that.
That's true. That's
Yeah,
true.
yeah.
So you got Bowie, you got Coppin, and what's the third?
Morgan and Morgan.
In Baltimore?
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
yes,
yeah.
yes. Fair enough. Look, man, tell people what most folks don't understand about how the city relies on the state, while the state also relies on the city, and you have that perspective as a sitting legislator in both of those spaces.
So, I think that's a great question, and I was like truly thankful to serve on both levels
Yeah.
because, and I like the way that I was able to do it. Serving as a city councilman for 5 years, and then moving on to the state for 4, and then coming back. Obviously, the state, from a legislative perspective, um, has a lot more purse strings, money.
Yeah.
But is more or less kind of um, the vision is down the road. It's like, so what takes place over the next, 5, 10, 15 years, and how can you set that up now?
That's interesting. I've never heard it described that way.
Yeah, we're local. It's like right now.
We fighting today.
It's right.
Yes.
It's no meet me in the playground in a week or two.
We're trying to get this trash taken out.
Yeah, correct.
A water main broke.
Exactly. Like it's today.
And they out here shooting.
It's today, right?
Yeah.
So whether it's 2 p.m. or 2 a.m., it's today, and you got to respond and act accordingly to it with limited amount of resources.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But on the city level, as it relates to like why I got into elected office to serve people like my mother and my grandmother and folks I saw in my community, on a city level, on a local level, you can effectuate change much faster. Right. So it's like, something that is really causing someone havoc in their life.
Yeah.
You are able to step in and be that conduit for city services to try to step in, help, and support.
Yeah.
Where again, is on a state level, it's really about where the funding is, right?
Yep.
And it's really being a visionary of how I can look out in 5 years and figure out, maybe I develop policy that is competent enough for folks to really understand and know how it's going to impact them now. But I understand and know that if this momentum continues, what it really could be or should be in 5 or 10 years for whatever issue I'm trying to kind of go after and solve. Mm-hmm. Another thing I learned on state level that I brought back to the city was just professionalizing the council in a way that I learned how Annapolis ran.
Yeah. And it's funny. I think that is one of the more universal things I hear, and frankly, I've seen for myself, is that state legislatures feel a lot more professional.
Oh, totally.
They feel a lot more like, I don't want to say prestigious, but it almost feels a lot more. It's like the Senate versus the House in D.C., right? The Senate feels a lot more like it's traditional, and this is where intellectuals are here. And those city councils, man, I mean, it's bare knuckles.
Sometimes, yeah. I mean, so look, when I took over as city council president, when I came back, and you're going to just look at this number and see how ridiculous it is. There's 15 council members in Baltimore. One's the city council president, and then there's 14.
So city council president is citywide.
Citywide.
At large.
It's voted citywide, not elected by the council. And then there's 14 districts throughout the city. So it's 15 members. We had 13 working committees. So basically everybody was a chair.
Yeah.
It was like going on Oprah show.
Yeah.
You get a chair. You get a chair. Everybody was a chair. And many of the policies that were related to those particular subject matters didn't really align with what the city has the ability to do. So we had a committee that was the education committee. And to the average person that's not in government, they say it makes sense for a place like Baltimore to have an education committee.
But the city has no authority over
any of the policy, any of the regulations.
Don't run the school board.
Don't run the well, the mayor elects, but all the regulations and stuff come down from the state, right? So it makes sense for us to like have that as a subtopic, in case we want to bring the school system in, but to have a standalone committee to just focus on education doesn't make any sense.
Right.
Now, what does make sense is how can you connect education, meaning like our school system, to recs and parks for like an after school program, or how can you connect education to like workforce development to ensure that we're providing real opportunities in these pipelines for workforce development for our young folks that are not going to go to college, but need to have pathways to real career and real success. So what I was able to do is, come up with like ways and means, education, workforce, and youth, public safety and government operations, like different committees that really tied the really important topics of our city, moving our city forward, together as standalone committees. It also increases the number of members on the committee. So
Yeah.
When I got there, some committees were 3 members,
Right,
right?
right,
So
right,
2
right,
people can
right.
put something on the floor,
Yep.
right? So now we have 5-member, 7-member committees, and that's just one small but very symbolic step about how I tried to professionalize the council in a way that made sense.
Well, you're talking and you're displaying expertise. And one of the primary things that we try to get across in the caucus room is that whether you're in media or you're an elected official on the state level, local level, municipal level, federal level, whether you're a philanthropist or a preacher, politics and governing is a profession that requires levels of expertise, right? You are a full-time legislator on the state and local level. Um, but you were full time dedicated to studying these problems and thinking through them and being thoughtful about policy because it's affecting a whole lot of people. And you're really displaying like you did this for real. Like this is not talking about Trump. This is not MSNBC or Fox and talking points. Like this is stuff you were actually doing. And on that city level, you're seeing the results. And it's like a laboratory, right? You can experiment to try to make people's lives better every single day. And it sounds like you took a lot of joy in trying to do that.
Oh, I did. I mean, absolutely love serving the citizens of Baltimore, but more importantly, knowing that folks that are in communities that I care about dearly, um, that there's solutions and pathways
Yeah.
to kind of counteract all the things that have been put in place
Right.
for the past 30, 40, 50, 60 years.
Yeah.
One very small thing is, really pushed and pushed on the school board and the school system to have after school organized sports
Yeah.
for our middle schoolers.
Yeah.
Our young folks should be exposed to it, but more importantly, girls, they weren't really getting exposed to organized sports until high school.
Mm-hmm.
And now in the city, they're at a competitive disadvantage to their peers around the state. So that's just really small.
Yeah.
It's somewhat symbolic, but it's really important as it relates to the overall development and the connectivity to what school is supposed to mean for all of us.
Yes.
Like I remember going to school, I was excited about this team or I was excited about this activity, a certain level of school pride, certain level of ownership of that particular space. Well, when our kids are trapped into these school environments that they just released, it's no after school programming. There's no a culture that's built up in the school. It's just given this new name versus that name 5, 6, 7 years ago.
Yeah.
Right? You're really cheating them of the experience of what school is supposed to mean for them. And that's more than just like the math and science and reading and arithmetic. It's really about how they're connected to the school, and their connection to the school also breeds on and feeds on their education.
I have lived in D.C. for a little bit more than 10 years now. So I have some exposure to the city of Baltimore, but not that much. But for the average American, Baltimore is somewhere between The Wire, The Ravens, and just an appendage of D.C.
Yeah.
So give the world the definition of your city. Who is Baltimore? What is Baltimore? Who lives there? Who are Baltimoreans? There is a distinct difference between Baltimore and DC, and you all have such a rich history and vibrant culture
Yeah.
that I frankly think is far more interesting than DC. And is
I didn't pay him to say that.
no, he did not. I think Baltimore is more interesting.
Washingtonians
Right?
getting mad at you, man.
Yeah, well, I don't want to diss DC because DC is more than Capitol Hill.
Yeah,
And it's more than DC, and it really is amazing neighborhoods. But I find Baltimore just so culturally rich and just so blackety black that it gives my heart joy in Baltimore.
Well, this is what I'll say about our city, and just frame it out without having like preconceived notions about it from The Wire or other things. Like Baltimore is on the East Coast, right? So we got a water to our east, we got the mountains to our west. We're 45 minutes away from Washington D.C., the nation's capital. We're 3 hours away from the Big Apple.
Yeah.
America's largest and most iconic city. When we talk about healthcare institutions, we have Johns Hopkins Healthcare, one of the number ones in the country. When we talk about history and culture, all the way from like Thurgood Marshall to Cab Calloway, Billie Holiday, whatever, we have it. When you talk about infrastructure, you talk about our houses, and when you talk about museum, like Baltimore City has all of the characteristics, 4 international airports within 100 miles. Baltimore City has the largest inward port to the Midwest, right? So that's why we get all the cars, and that's why we get all the machinery. So a huge port.
Mhm.
Baltimore has all the characteristics of like this amazing, great old American city. And where we sit at as a city with all those characteristics that is predominantly Black, um, the idea or kind of the skew of it is always about the negativity.
Yeah.
Right. Baltimore's a wire. You go anywhere in America, go anywhere in the country and say Baltimore, someone doesn't know it. The likelihood that they tie the wire to it is really
High.
interesting, right?
Very high. Yeah.
Which is a fair connection because that is part of the city,
Mhm.
right? That was reality at certain times and in certain communities. But I say all that to say, right now, there's no other place in America that's like Baltimore.
Mm.
And I say that with, hopefully soon to be the first U.S. Senator of our
Yep.
state being Black.
Yep.
We have a governor
Yep.
who's Black. We have a congressman who's Black.
Speaker of the House.
Speaker of the House who's Black.
Mhm.
The blackest
Attorney General.
the blackest General Assembly in the entire country.
Yeah.
More
right.
Black senators, more Black delegates in the state of Maryland than anywhere else, right here.
And that means something.
All this means something.
Yeah.
Attorney General, right?
Mhm.
Then we go local level.
Yeah.
Black mayor, Black city council president, predominantly Black
County executives.
county exec,
Yep.
all of it right here, right? So the reality is, well, what are we doing with it?
Yeah.
Right? Because if we're not talking about, again, the economic paradigm shifts that we desperately need in our communities, if we're not talking about developing the policies that's pushing that narrative and that agenda forward, then what are we doing with it?
Mhm.
If the reality is, from an economics perspective, if you can't do it in Baltimore City, where can you do it at?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And the idea is, in 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and this is how I've always operated, this is how I always govern, if we're not pushing that narrative forward, that agenda forward, then in 20 and 30 years, if things are still the same or even worse for our communities, for folks that look like me, then shame on us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. What did we do with the moment?
That's always the approach that I've
You
taken.
know what though? When you say what do we do with this, you're right. You've laid out that in Baltimore and frankly in the larger state of Maryland, the formula is there, right? To have the opportunity to get things right for a progressive legislative agenda. How you feel about this? I want to know how you feel about this. I feel like our generation of politicians is content with doing it for the ground. And that really frustrates me. I went to the White House, I went to the state dinner, I was at CBC, I was fly, look at my suit. Yo, you hear this $1 Million Baby song playing on the back of this reel.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like that is so frustrating. Personal rant, if you will.
No, let's
Thank you
go.
for
Let's
allowing,
go. Let's
but
get into it. I call it performative politics. So the reality, that's what we do.
Yeah.
We perform.
Yeah.
It's so weird because unfortunately there's a huge disconnect and disenfranchisement of our people,
Mhm.
right? The overwhelming base of our people, particularly in certain communities. And then when you have them in this subset and you get the guy that's out there with the shiny literature,
Yeah.
that's sponsored and supported by whomever that gets elected, a lot of times it's the race to get a bill that's passed that might be great in name,
Yeah.
but horrible on execution and policy as it relates to our folks.
Right.
And that's why I've always taken a stance of just doing the right thing and really trying to educate folks on what policy is and what it means and how it's going to impact us and the unintended consequences that we're seeing. I think one of the biggest things, particularly not just in Baltimore, but all throughout the country is, we've seen gentrification in our communities, but now because of this concoction of interest rates and of coming out of the recession and of prices are going through the roof from a real estate perspective, we've seen this concoction has created policies that look to be like do-gooder policies for our communities, but are really just going to exacerbate gentrification.
Yeah.
And I think those are the things that I would like the conscious folks to really just take a step back and organize in a way that's going to be more supportive of our communities in a way that we didn't necessarily see from an economic perspective of the past.
Yeah.
Like it's no longer do we just go after the social programming? Do we just go after providing this and that?
Yeah.
But we really go after, again, this economic paradigm shift in a way of ownership, participation, equity of the things that are moving our communities and are part of our communities and moving them forward. And those are the things I've always, spoke about, whether I was a city councilman or a state delegate or now city council president. I'll continue to push.
Give me a snapshot of 2015. I'm from St. Louis. Baltimore and St. Louis are very, very similar cities.
Two independent cities.
Yes, two
Yeah,
independent
so
cities.
cities and municipalities for
That's
folks
right.
out there. Yeah,
That's right. That's
the
right.
largest in the country.
Uh-huh.
Baltimore and St. Louis.
They're literally on the same latitude, like right there together. And a lot of the same kind of Rust Belt mindset.
Blue collar
Blue
places.
collar
Yeah.
folks. And we had this similar incidents back to back with the civil rights, the modern civil rights movement, in which we had 2014 with Michael Brown in St. Louis, 2015, Freddie Gray.
Yeah.
You are on the city council.
Yeah.
Your then wife, Marilyn, is the state's attorney for Baltimore City.
Correct. Yep.
Take us back to the summer of 2015 and where you all are in your life and political careers and what happens and Freddie Gray and everything changes.
So, I think that has forever changed many people's lives, but definitely our life.
Yeah.
I remember I got the call from, I represented the area that all that took place. I was the councilman in 7th District, which is in West Baltimore. And I got a call that the police beat up this young man and he's in the hospital.
Mm.
And didn't know Freddie Gray, family didn't know much about it. I think I reached out to the police commissioner at the time just to kind of get information. Never knew it was going to turn into like this international type of deal. Just trying to really understand the information. And then I found out that he's doing really bad.
Yeah.
That there's a good chance that he might pass. And then this is where in the community, kind of these rumors or this whispering turns into like this loud roar.
This is interesting because we also had West Bellamy in here, and he talked about being on the city council, presiding over the district where it all happened.
Yeah.
At the moment of crisis, this kind of global crisis in the eyes of the world. And at least the city is looking to you for some type of leadership in this moment.
Yeah. I got it. So then the next call I got is I got this call from this angry person. Not sure they got my number. They said, "We're organizing for, Freddie Gray. You need to get your butt out here. Like, where are you? We never see our elected officials," which is like the common thing when folks are, concerned about something. So, I started looking to it even more, because I think that's like on Sunday. Now we're going into Monday, whatever. So now I'm out there, right? I'm on. This is all peaceful. Folks are organizing around the police station. People are coming up to me like, "Oh man, you're here. Thank you." Just really trying to understand and know like what took place. Because at this point, we still don't really know all that has taken place. And that goes on. And then, I'm getting interviewed from CNN, MSNBC, like more peaceful protests are going on. Go to the funeral. And I'll never forget this, Don. Coming out of the funeral, I had a spot with Wolf Blitz on CNN right outside the church. And I'm standing there and they're in my ear, councilman, we're coming back to you. Just give us 5 more minutes. Give us 15 more minutes. Give us 20 more minutes.
Right.
And they just keep prolonging. I don't know what's going on. I'm seeing helicopters go all around me, but still have no clue. As council president, unfortunately, we're going to have to cancel. We're going to try to bring you back on tomorrow. Sorry to have you waiting for half an hour, whatever. Thank you. I have a city council meeting. So I get in my car. I go down to North Avenue. I start driving on North Avenue, and boom. I see like the first police car, like doors ripped off, kids jumping on top of it, seeing fires, just kids everywhere.
This is for the first time the protests have gotten aggressive.
So what happened was there's a school, Frederick Douglass High School, that's close to this area. They have been reports that the young folks were going to do some demonstration or do something, and in the city's infinite wisdom, I'll say, they shut down the subway.
Yeah.
They stopped all the buses from coming in there, and they basically left all these kids, 1,000 kids, whatever, stranded in West Baltimore to somewhat fend for their own, right? So because they were afraid of what they were going to do to downtown or what they were going to do as an organized group.
They shut off access to the city.
Shut off access to these young folks.
Yeah.
So the young folks migrated down further south, North Avenue, and unfortunately, a lot of them participated in unproductive behavior.
Sure.
How orchestrated it was, it's kind of hard to really like dig into it, but that's just the reality of it. So I see all this. I drive to City Hall, and I'll never forget. I get a call. It's an anonymous call or whatever on my phone. It's blocked. I never answer that on my cell phone. I answer the phone. It's the White House,
Mm.
and they say, Councilman.
This is still an Obama White House. Right?
This is Obama White House.
Yeah, yeah.
They're like, Councilman, we're hearing reports from folks that everything's under control in Baltimore. We're just calling around to folks. We wanted to hear directly from you. Like, is everything okay in the district or whatever? And I said, no.
Yeah.
So literally, I just like 5 minutes ago, it's chaos. Like, we need as much help as possible. Like, we do not have this under control. I ran into the city council president's office at the time. We have a city council meeting that night. We talk about it that night. And then from there, it just didn't stop. As it relates to,
what do you think your role is? So there's chaos happening in the city. The city's burning. Twitter is popping. These folks ain't doing nothing. They ain't stand up. I mean, this was early in that protest culture that is viral and ugly and nasty and everything else. What do you feel like your role is, and what did you do in the moment?
So I felt like my role was to, one, be there, be present, right, and be connected to my community in a way that they saw me, they could feel me, they could talk to me. My role was to also ensure that folks were allowed to protest productively. So giving them the right to speak out, but also respect of folks' property and the like. But the most important role that I didn't know what it was that turned out to be was just a level of, one, cultural competency. In a way that can articulate what was going on. When folks saw the fires, the flipped over cars, the young folks that were just really angered. And how Freddie Gray was like somewhat a tipping point. It wasn't the beginning.
Right.
Like, they were expressing the anger of their fathers, their grandfathers, their great grandfathers. They were expressing all the disconnect. And you said viral. I'm just grinding, man. I'm getting a couple hours of sleep. Maryland and I are like passing ships in the night. My kids are at my sister's house because it's so close to the unrest. We live in West Baltimore, and I'll never forget. I woke up, and like 2 days later, I get a call from MTV. They want to do an interview. Like, everybody's calling there, international. Everybody's calling CNN. They want to do this call about this video that went viral. And I'm like, what video went viral? Well, I did an interview with Fox News on Scene where they tried to grab me up and say, like, look at all this stuff. What's going on? And that interview went viral. It hit like 2 million hits that night and just kept going. But I say all to say that third point is, I think my role, and I know the importance of having folks that look like me that are culturally connected to communities, like our community's role is being a leader, but it's also being a voice for the voiceless, being able to effectively communicate the reality of the situation, and not allow mainstream media to turn it into its own narrative.
Yeah. So when it's all happening, talk about what you saw in terms of, because at this time, prior to Freddie Gray, you and Marilyn are really riding high. I mean, you guys are extraordinary public servants. You're young, you've got young kids, and things are going pretty well. Maryland decides properly to prosecute the officers who caused the damage that from the rough ride that resulted in Freddie Gray's passing. Let's be, frank about it. She prosecutes the officers who killed Freddie Gray, right? And that was the right thing to do at that time. How did that change y'all's lives in terms of the effect it had on your political career?
Oh, it was, it's so odd. I can remember us taking the girls after it all happened, maybe a couple weeks later, going into a ice cream shop, and it's in a predominantly white area, where obviously the patrons are predominantly white, and we walk in and they see Maryland and they just start clapping.
Wow.
Right? And
White folks.
White folks.
Clapping.
They're like, thank you so much.
Wow.
You saved our city. We know it was hard. You did the right thing. And that's where it was for a couple months. But the reality of it all, it's like a roller coaster ride. They bring you up really high,
Yeah.
and then that fall is real.
Yeah.
So to see, it's so weird, it's so strange. But we also understand and know through history, the folks that were there, quote unquote, with her. Whether it's like you know different organizations or nonprofits or folks that appreciated her doing what she did at that particular time. To see once the money and once the power got into villainizing her for any and everything that she did after that.
Yeah.
How quickly all those people turned their backs on her.
Yeah.
And that was kind of something that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like you can take a step back and kind of look at this picture and like appreciate and understand it. But living through it and seeing that breakdown of it was just a completely, and that is what kind of, set her next political journey on the way it was for her to try to win the second time, and she won the second time, despite,
Mhm.
you know, some of the
People don't
naysayers.
realize she was reelected after that.
Oh, she was
right?
reelected after.
Yeah.
I mean, what people don't realize is that she prosecuted 33 other officers after the Freddie Gray office successfully.
Right.
People don't realize that she set up, a unit that let 12 African American men, not had nothing to do with their race, but free for crimes they never committed. That total
Exonerated.
over like 300 or 400 years combined.
Yeah.
So she was still like aggressively doing the work,
Mhm.
despite, I guess, all of the negative pushback that she got from that one. Like the reality is, if she doesn't prosecute those officers, I believe she still does all the same stuff that she was doing, but the level of visceral hatred towards her,
Yeah.
not just from like the average folks, but inside the system,
Yeah. For sure.
judges,
Yeah.
prosecutorial officers,
It's a
it would be
disruption.
totally different.
I mean, that's the thing. Like, let's just assume that policing is a problem, right? In certain contexts and in certain communities, over policing, aggressive policing, physical policing, policing that abuses or kills black men, that's a thing in this country, right? We can agree. And if you consider that to be the case, um, that is not sustained solely by police. Right? That is sustained by a system and actors within the system who know that this happens yet continue to perpetuate this thing. There's judges involved, there's prosecutors involved, there's public defenders involved, where we just feed these vulnerable communities into the system. But it starts with, that's why I got a picture of Johnny Cochran over there, because he always told me that the most powerful actor in the criminal justice system is the cop on the street because they bring you into the system, right? But their behavior is sustained by an entire apparatus, if you will. I think you made a really interesting point that entire apparatus began to uh, turn on her in some ways after she began prosecuting police, which is effectively a way of disrupting this system.
Yeah, I mean, which was weird because she's from like 4 generations of police
Police,
officers.
yes,
Her grandfather's like one of the first black police officers in the city of Boston. He's a charter member of the police officer black
yeah.
union up there. So it's weird because
And she's a police officer. As a prosecutor, she is a
it's
law
weird.
enforcement
Her mother,
officer.
her father, aunts, uncles, like she's from a police officer family. So this idea that she has this like hatred or negative view of police officers was just crazy. But more importantly, it just was patently wrong.
Yeah.
And I think that partially that ate away with her in doing the right thing and trying to continue to force to do the right thing. But people can scream and yell whatever they want, but sometimes that noise interferes with the work, and sometimes it's effective. And what we know is, it's death by 1,000 cuts.
Yeah.
Folks keep different angles, different perspectives, and different viewpoints coming at you, and that's ultimately what we saw. But yeah, she was able to win that second re-election.
So, do you feel like the apparatus she put in place to consistently and rightfully prosecute or really just disrupt this kind of criminal injustice system, do you feel like that brought scrutiny to y'all's personal lives that otherwise wouldn't have been there had she
Totally.
not taken
I mean, it's back to the performative elected official.
Yeah.
I mean, realities. Look, I'm a kid from Northeast Baltimore. I tell you all the time. Grew up in a house with 3 bedrooms, 6 women. I had the story.
Yeah.
Like you lay out. Oh, he got the story right.
Yeah.
She's a story. She grew up working class. Grandparents raised her.
Mhm.
Parents had issues and concerns. I mean, her. Was there when her cousin was murdered as a wrongful identity, mistaken identity type of. She has a story, right?
Yeah.
So both of us we come in a union. We do the right thing. We go to college, grad school, have a family, buy a house in the middle of West Baltimore. It's vacant and abandoned. We fix it up. We're there. We're elected officials serving our communities, and we can sit there and even elevate ourselves for just doing business as usual.
Yeah.
Doing the performative politics.
Yeah.
Oh, we're here to serve you.
Yeah.
We're here to do this. We're here to do that.
There was an easier path.
Completely easier path.
Yeah.
That the reality is most people take.
Yes.
Right. And I'm not trying to disparage. I love a lot of people in elected office throughout this country, and a lot of people are doing a lot of great work. But if you're serious about the work, the folks that are just kind of there, right? And that was never the approach that we took. That she took more visibly because she was on a national stage of the because of the Freddie Gray case, or some of the stances I took in fighting to do something like Save the Preakness, right?
So we're gonna get into that. But they're taking certain stands, whether it be ban the box or prosecuting police officers, even if they're blatantly abusive police officers. That certain steps come with a risk, right? That there are people who want an oppressive system to remain in place that will not like you for what you're doing, right? You accept the risk to some degree of doing the right thing for your people, and the risk is going to be on you and your family.
Yeah, but everything is relative. So risk being like, oh, I might lose this election, or oh, I might face 40 years in prison.
Yeah.
Never thought that.
Yeah.
Never thought that this idea that the weight of the federal government would come down on us the way it did for as long as it did. Right?
How long was once you thought that between you or her, and ultimately ends up being her? How long between?
Well, I always knew that she was the target.
Yeah.
They just saw me as a conduit to get to her.
So let's just get into the meat of the whole thing. How long has this, been a cloud over your family?
Since Freddie Gray.
Since 2009 years.
16, yeah.
Sheesh. You had enough Los Hermanos? Do we need to re-up the Hermanos?
No, it's been that, for quite some time, yeah.
How have you gone about the everyday responsibilities of, again, not only your job, but just parenting, right? I mean, this has not been easy. No. How have you dealt with this?
Well, the reality is, from a parenting perspective, and again, I have 2 amazing daughters. Couldn't imagine having any other kids that would be able to go through and see and be part of what they've had to be part of. But the reality is, they didn't choose any of this. Like, Daddy could have continued to be a successful electrical engineer, building cloud storage data centers all across the country.
Right.
What I was doing prior. Mommy could be in-house counsel at this company or at a firm, and that could be our lives. That's not a life that we chose.
Yeah.
But more importantly, that's not the life that they chose.
Oh, yeah.
My children.
Yeah.
Right. So the reality is, growing up in a house where I didn't have a father, right? And always wanting to be a father to do what I didn't have, right? I was never going to allow any of the noise to kind of get in the way or disrupt my role as a father, which I feel is my primary job. And ultimately, I think that's how we've been able to do it. And then, anybody with a story, you understand and know that the story ends. Like whatever chapters in that particular book ends. It's really about just holding on. You know what I mean?
To quote the great Glorilla. To quote Glorilla from Memphis 10.
Let me hear this.
At the end of the day, they gonna end. Right?
So that's the reality. So it's about holding on. Seeing it through.
But yeah, it is about holding on. But man, you get into this to help your people in your hood in West Baltimore. And at some point, it seems like it was an awfully heavy price to pay.
Oh, it is.
And look, and she's not going to jail. All thanks be to God. And thanks to all the people who prayed and advocated, and I think she did a wonderful job of advocating for herself. But it's a heavy price to pay for standing up for your people, for doing the right thing. And it's a price that we've seen exacted on Black families who are in public service across the country.
But the reality is,
But it always has been.
But yeah, and so this is what we say. If not us, then who? If not now, then when?
And when.
So the reality is, no matter what, I mean, and maybe this is a tough pill for a lot of people to swallow, but the reality is, if we don't take steps in the right direction, that the overwhelming folks in our profession will never do.
Yeah.
Whether you call it carriage or whatever, just will never do.
Yeah.
Then who's not to say that the Don Calloway in 10, 12, 15, 20 years, because of the work that you did, is now putting his people, his community on a whole nother level.
Yeah.
That is the reality is, if it wasn't for the suffrage of folks 10 years ago or 20 years ago or 30 years ago, we wouldn't even be in these positions.
Right.
Again, I'm a first generation college student.
Yeah.
She was a first generation college student. My daughters are going to well exceed going to law school or going to getting a master's degree, right?
That's right.
So with that sacrifice comes reward.
Yeah.
Maybe reward that you don't necessarily directly benefit from. Now, just taking a step back and being and level setting it, who I would have never known in a million years of what ultimately happened and how it happened. I could have never guessed that.
You couldn't
as
have
far
written
as
that.
Sacrifice.
Right.
But did I expect some level of sacrifice? Yes. Not to this degree. Now the question is, would I do it all over again? Like, Nick, will you still stand up there and this for your family and that for your family? I would say yes.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. I know that we're about the same age and we come from very, very similar circumstances in terms of city to college journey to trying to make a way in public service and maintain families. I think a lot about what I could have done differently and what I would have done differently, not only in politics but in life. Obviously, I'm sure you have publicly and in court under oath taken all the accountability for some of the things that you could have done differently. But then there is this aspect of being targeted for standing up for what is right, for standing up for marginalized communities. Over the years, there's a lot of negative headlines or tidbits or clickbait about not only Maryland, but specifically NickMosby. There's back taxes. There's compliance on campaign finance reports. There's the water bill. I want you to take the opportunity to set the record straight on all of that. And I'll tell you, because what I don't see is physical abuse of your wife or any citizens. What I don't see is misappropriation of funds. What I don't see is stealing. What I don't see is insider deals and self-dealing and self-trading. What I don't see is an insurrection. What I don't see is shutting down people who had differing opinions from you. So, politics is a profession.
Yeah.
Talk about what you think you could have done better from a we got to be tight perspective.
So I think that obviously, so say instance, like you're the first generation college student, right? And whether it's student loans, whether it's caring for other family members, graduating at 21, 22 years old and being the breadwinner of your family.
Yeah, I'm the guy.
Right? Yeah, you're right. So whether it's nieces,
which was never a responsibility I had, right?
Oh yeah, it's fine. Yeah. So that's one kind of badge that you have to carry in that kind of plight.
Yeah.
Right. What I will say is, and what I'm committed to doing is, I look forward to identifying and connecting with the next NickMosby, right, and ensuring we put the infrastructure around them, right, where we appreciate all that you're doing and what you're doing.
Yeah.
But this is important to ensure that you have an accountant.
Yeah.
This is critically important to ensure that you have this best, professional service. The things that come like as innately or ingrained in someone that's from a traditional pathway.
Yeah.
That has the luxury or the privilege. Ensuring that those things are around them to insulate them from just the common things that people go after to try to go after the person.
Yes.
Right.
Yes,
I would never, question why because I owed $40,000 in taxes, it became the biggest circus in the world. Or there's folks that owe 100,000, 200, But the reality is, you put that out on public display, of my life. So, I think that is my almost part of my calling through this experience. Like, I don't want you, to the future Don or future Nick, not to do the right thing for your people, not to speak up on the right thing, not to just kind of do this performative level of politics. I want you to do that, but also it's my job, it's my duty now to ensure that you're insulated, from all the different chicks at your armor, to ensure that you can continue to perform that job and do it in a way that's critically important.
And you can do it in a way that stands up, because there will be backlash for you standing up for marginalized communities. That is the American story.
It's as American as apple pie.
And
right,
the guys before us, they killed them. Right?
You say that, but that is a really good point.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So
the wages of participating in this game is you can be killed for standing up for marginalized communities.
Correct.
And that is not a thing of the past.
Correct. So what we hope is, in 20 years and 30 years, that, again, we'll continue to chip away at that, and folks will be in a much cleaner pathway to do the right things for their people, right? And stand up to grow our society, to grow our communities.
So all of this took place, man, and while your former wife, your partner in parenting, was dealing with the weight of the world, culminating with a guilty conviction, but God bless, a not going to go to jail, right? Collective sigh in the Wakandan community last week. But against the backdrop of all of this, you are having to run to retain your job and maintain your political life, at least as it currently exists.
Yeah.
I have to imagine that the criminal trial and drawn out sentencing intersecting with your race, I have to imagine it has something to do with the result in your election, because I have been to Baltimore and the results were not congruent with how I've seen you received on the streets in Baltimore in different neighborhoods.
Yeah. I mean, so the reality, just laying out the numbers. I'm a numbers guy, right? I win resoundingly 4 years ago.
Yeah.
3-4 months into my term is when the FBI comes into City Hall and publicly announces this investigation.
That's right. At the beginning.
Right at the beginning, right?
Raided your office? Raided, they say raided.
Yeah, but they just came to interview me, but they did it publicly. They could interview you anywhere. Typically, they don't necessarily announce an investigation, but that's what they decided to do. So it's all over the news, like literally 3-4 months in, right?
Yeah.
So what that does to my office, what that does to the perception in the community. They immediately go to black churches, right? They start pulling all their books and, figuring out, it's this huge spectacle for forever at this point, because once it started, it doesn't stop.
Right.
Till just fast forward till today, where I have to run a campaign, I have to go through election, and my former wife, because through this we got a divorce, is about to be sentenced.
Yeah.
Right. So my entire first term as city council president, only term as city council president, was with this cloud over our head, my head.
Yeah.
And obviously it's tough to govern that way. It's tough to run that way. And
it's tough to live that way. I mean,
hey man, I did it though. But the reality is, our community relies on media as if media doesn't have an agenda. And it's always taking place. I guess what broke my heart at the poll is hearing like some of our folks, particularly African American women, that had just so disappointed in, I guess, me not being there for Maryland, or not handling certain things, was probably hurtful to me.
Yeah.
Because I know that, and I talk about this all the time, my connection with my mother, who's no longer here, I know that everything I've done, and the way I've done it and conducted myself as a man, as a family man, as an elected official, that she would be proud. And that's what I hold up to the highest, right? So despite the headlines, despite the narrative, despite the rumors, I know that she would be so proud of the work that I've done. That I don't have the ability of going on my Instagram page and communicating to be bigger than what the Baltimore whatever paper can kind of put out there about you.
But I mean, in your testimony, you took the stand and you stood tall. Some would even say you fell on the sword, right? So
I didn't have to do it.
Yeah.
Right? That's the reality.
What do you mean? Break that down.
I didn't have to. I mean, I did that to.
Oh, you didn't have to take the. Yeah. No, I mean, in the trial, it was very public that you took full accountability. You fell on the sword, such that one could say, had she ended up, she was found guilty, but had she gone to
of something else,
of something else, that's
yeah.
right, that's right. How did you feel the whole time, and how did you manage the stress of knowing that, if she goes down, this could ultimately be seen as I was responsible for this?
So I was threatened with that.
Yeah.
About taking the stand.
Yeah.
And I still did it.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I don't know how not to do the right thing.
Whew.
And I knew. And
why was that the right thing, though?
Because one, I knew that all that she had gone through and been through and put through, I knew where it was the motivation of it all.
Yeah.
It had nothing to do with justice.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it was clear if anybody paid attention to sentencing, there's no victim in whatever crime is alleged and ultimately convicted for, right? So
I think she did a great job of taking to national media before the sentencing. You got to toe a line, right? You don't want to provoke the sentencer.
Yeah.
But she did a very good job of making it clear, like, ain't no public funds involved.
This is all my money.
Yeah.
I mean, from the $5,000 that was in a joint bank account that she put in there, and the bank told her she couldn't use it, that she'd taking it out and giving it to me for me sending it back. It's all her, it's all her money. It's all our money. It's America. So, I don't. At this point, I have no idea what justice or law is. I'm still confused about how you can use your own money to get a mortgage, like all of your own money, like nobody else's money, and it wound up in this way.
Well, maybe if you prosecute 33 police on the way to doing that, perhaps that's the problem, not the.
you said it. I didn't say it. But no. Back to your question is, I just don't know how not to do the right thing, and I knew that was the right thing. I knew that. We've been sitting with the weight of the federal government on us for years. I knew that they had already gotten a conviction off of her, taken from her retirement account, her own money again, that I think 63,000 Americans did at the same exact time. She's the only person that has been investigated and prosecuted for. And I knew that it was important for me to do it for my children. Speaking out on behalf of our family, like really communicating like what was going on. And there was no doubt in my mind that I wasn't going to go and testify, despite knowing that they were going to try to bring up any and everything to disparage me or look me.
And take responsibility. Like you took responsibility.
That's what men do.
That man, I mean,
you getting teary-eyed?
Man, because man, niggas talk about what they would do, you know what I mean, and standing tall, but you ain't been faced with that moment, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
and I don't know, man, that a lot of cats would have did what you did.
I would do it.
And that ain't no punk shit, man.
I would do it 10 times over, man.
Why did I'm gonna just try to babble so you can talk so I can wipe away my misty eye, man. Because you stood tall, man.
Whatever, man. Yeah.
Because you didn't get into this for that. You know what I mean? You didn't get into this being from Baltimore, stepping up to serve West Baltimore. You're not with your kids. You're not with your family. You're not making as much money as you could make. It's a sacrifice, man. And you didn't get into it to get. And divorce is tough. I didn't did that. And it's not fun. And you're doing this. I thought I was doing what I was supposed to do for my city, right? And for my people. And to result in such extraordinary punishment from the same government that you work for and you believe in is that's taxing stuff, man. And you were handling it extraordinarily well. That's got to be frustrating, man. When you're talking about 4, 5, 6, 7 years of extended, trial like
Again, the
this.
reality is the chapter ends,
Yeah.
the book doesn't end.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And what you've been able, when you go through the toughest storm in your life, what you learn from it, it only makes you so much better.
yeah,
And it only allows you to pull more people away from where you came from. Right. So that's the way I look at it. I look at it as, um, I've learned a lot about myself,
yeah,
about this process, about this journey. That if I could ever ensure that another Nick Mosby, Don Calloway, who's coming up, wants to go to this school and do this and do that, that they don't have to do it, I'm gonna be there for them, and I'll be there to support them and ensure that again we insulate them in a way that makes total sense. And I'm thankful for the experience. Obviously, I would not want to go through that experience,
yeah,
but I think you have to look at it in a way that um, you got to see it through,
yeah,
and you got to take that loss. You got to
yeah,
take those lumps.
yeah,
And you got to grow from them,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
It's no point of crying over spilled milk. There's no point of like worrying about the finger that's already written.
yeah,
That's already written.
yeah.
It's about what's the next steps, right? And I think that that is what my young girls have been able to see, not just through me, but also through their mother,
Yes, sir.
who, through an insurmountable amount of adversity and challenges and just wait. I mean, the other side of all this, Don, is we're not talking about all the death threats,
Yeah,
right? We're not talking about the calls and the letters to the house and people coming to the house and all that we've gone through,
yeah,
all of that. Like, again, nothing that you ever expect. My daughter wrote something and she said, I get why people don't like my mother because, and they don't like my parents because of what they stand for, but I don't understand, like, basically why you think that you should take their lives because what they stand for ultimately, right? And, whether it's mental health or whether it's whatever, I mean, we've seen it all
yeah.
throughout this entire, and it hasn't stopped. I mean, it still continues, right?
Well, it needs to stop.
Right.
Certainly you haven't asked for that, nor do you deserve that. Um, you have 6 more months left. It should be noted to say 7 more months left on your actual job as the number 2 guy in your home city.
Yeah.
So what are you trying to get across the finish line as we go towards the end of your term as city council president? And then what is in Nick Mosby 3.0 post politics?
So from a politics side, really been pushing on affordable home ownership for working class folks,
Yeah.
our bus drivers, our paraprofessionals, the folks that we deemed as essential workers. Baltimore City is still a market where, working class can afford to own property,
Yeah.
but it's a heavily rented market, right? So really pushing local government on ensuring that we prioritize working class folks to have access to home ownership because we understand that once these rates start to eventually decline after inflation comes back down, prices are going to steadily increase.
Yeah.
And the reality of folks being able to afford and own property is going to become more and more rare as 5 years, 10 years, 15 years go on. Another thing is like creating real pathways to sustainable employment for our young folks. We know with automation and artificial intelligence, many of the jobs that we can kind of appreciate and kind of see today are literally going to be gone. I don't think people get it over the next
Yeah.
5 years.
Yeah, it's real.
Like
It's coming.
you look
It's
up
not
to
coming, it's here. Yeah.
here, you
Yeah.
look up in 2000, you look in 2030. I promise you, America, the world, is going to be completely different.
That's right.
So the things that are afforded to us as it relates to employment are not going to be the case. So like, what are we doing of thinking ahead of not allowing our kids just to be users of technologies, but developers of those same technologies through their lived experiences
Yeah.
because it's critically important. Like, how can you kind of garner or gain that market, right? What are the career paths that are still going to be around that I saw the other day a robot hanging sheetrock,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
robots going in there and splicing wires. I mean, this is here
Mhm.
and it's going to happen, right? So what are we doing for our young folks as it relates to like connecting the dots of understanding and knowing the importance of being connected to technology and not just being a user of a
A device
electronic
yeah.
device,
Yeah.
but developing not the hardware, but the software that goes into it
Yep.
that directly counteracts and fits into kind of your life. And then I'll say lastly, so we talk about real estate, we talk about education. Um, The last thing I'll say, education through employment. The last thing I'll say is how critical it is for us to care for our elderly.
Mm.
Um, so ensuring that programs that have constantly taken advantage of them, programs that have constantly created new opportunities for gentrification, that they're able to kind of live in the spaces that they have come accustomed to and they should be come accustomed to. So really retaining our real estate, really retaining our communities in the light through the eyes of our senior populations. So that's kind of things I'm really focused on, inclusionary housing and jobs and stuff from a political perspective. As it relates to next steps, I mean, obviously my number one job, the job that I absolutely love, is being a father,
There you
right?
go.
So I'm gonna continue to try to be a good father. But I think there's a lot of opportunity out there for
Yeah.
someone like me. From the corporate side of things, been in government for a really long time, and really trying to push and move the agenda. It's funny because right after I lost, like literally the next day, I was like, "So what are you gonna do next?
Yeah.
What's up next?"
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm about to
Yeah.
go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
Hold on, I'll be back.
I'm gonna take a nap. Yeah.
So I still don't have it all way, completely figured out, but with good prayer and doing the right things and being right by people,
Yeah.
it'll get there.
Well, look, man, new psalmist would be proud.
Oh, look at you!
Hey,
You
man.
do all your.
Listen,
This guy's
new psalmist.
Wikipedia.
Hey, man, new psalmist is proud. Your daughters is proud. Tuskegee is proud. Your partners is proud. I consider myself among them. And your mama is proud, man.
Your
So
mom's
listen,
proud.
brother, you have ultimately stood tall. And that's all we can ask of any real G out here, man. I think I'm so proud of the way that you've conducted yourself. Uh, you know, as Killer Mike says, man, the devil sent the storm to break you, but you ain't bowed or bent. And man, that's so easy to say, man. And it's so cliche. I stood tall, I did. Nah, man, but like, have you been tried in the fire, bro? Like,
10 toes down.
Everybody's 10 toes down until something comes try to lift you up, right? And man, bro, you didn't took it, man. You didn't took it, and just as a man, as an advocate for brothers, man, and brothers in this game, I couldn't be prouder, man, of how tall you have stood, even in the face of mistakes, in the face of trials, and taking accountability for what we have done wrong individually, but staying focused on, I have tried to serve the collective. Uh, you have performed extraordinarily admirably under the toughest of circumstances I've ever seen, brother. So your boy is proud of you, man, and you have every reason, man, to maintain a head held high because you have played this game well, brother. So
I appreciate that, Mr.
congratulations.
Chair.
Hey, man, you done stood tall, brother.
Yeah.
Cheers, man. We finished all the.
We got to head back to Baltimore and check them out.
Yeah, listen.
make
Next
sure-
episode we'll take live at Los Hermanos Distillery, man. City Council President NickMosby, ladies and gentlemen. Appreciate you coming through the caucus room, man.
Thanks for having me on, brother.
God bless,
Yes, sir.
brother. Right on. Anything you want to close out with, man?
No, man. Thank you for this platform. Continue to push. Everybody go out there, follow the caucus.
Yeah.
It's critically important that we have opportunities for us to be open.
Yeah.
And really organic and kind of communicate our stories and not allow other folks to do so. So I appreciate the opportunity.
Hey, well done, brother.
Yes, sir.
God bless, man. Yes, sir. This is the caucus room. This is Baltimore City Council President and stand-up guy, NickMosby. We'll see y'all next time.